Welcome to an international to fire the imagination. A formidable France returning to Wembley after an absence of 23 years. They're a major attraction, of course, but extra interest and the raising of some eyebrows at Graham Taylor's team. Only 4 of the side who did England proud in Poland are in the team tonight. Chris Woods in goal, of course. The Forest defenders, Des Walker and Stuart Pearce, who is honoured with the captaincy, with Gary Lineker left on the bench, and Jeff Thomas in midfield. Rob Jones, Martin Keown and Alan Shearer take their first international steps. David Hirst and Nigel Clough, still relative novices at this level. Mark Wright and Neil Webb set out again after interruptions through injuries. Well, France have made no concessions because of the European Championship confrontation in June, but Michel Platini has lost 3 of his regular team to injuries. So in goal, Gilles Rousset is chosen for only the 2nd time. Christian Perez is picked on the left of midfield, and Eric Cantona is needed to support Jean-Pierre Papin. Cantona's fitness fortified by 2 games for Leeds United, both friendlies at the end of last week. So many of the England side have so much to prove, and Gary Lineker, who was last used by England as a substitute, incidentally, back in 1985, sits now behind Alan Ball, who's delighted to be back in the England setup as a coach alongside Laurie McMenemy there. France wanting to extend this marvellous record under Michel Platini. 19 games unbeaten, 9 successive international victories, and at the very least wanting to score a goal here at Wembley, which was beyond France in their previous 3 visits. The referee is a German, Arend Schmidhuber, who was in charge of England against the Republic of Ireland in Cagliari in the 1990 World Cup finals. Well, the conditions for this February friendly much better than last year, when Cameroon came here in sub-zero temperatures. Here's Laurent Blanc, the first Frenchman to play in the Italian league since Platini himself, and some first thoughts from Ron Atkinson. Ron, good evening to you.
Good evening, Martin. Yes, fascinating contest. Obviously, as you say, many people have in the England team have a lot to prove. Be also interesting to see how France have developed since the great days. I mean, it's our first real look at them, and they've got this impressive record over the last 3 years, but it must be said, none of them in matches with a real cutting edge.
Well, they might argue that a 100% record in the European Championship qualifiers was coming through some relatively pressurised situations. They have certainly changed in their nature since the glory days of the mid-80s, when Platini and Giresse and Tigana ruled the roost in midfield. And Fernandez, who got his tackle in there, was the 4th member of that quartet and still survives now. They regard themselves as a tougher, more tenacious group of players, but with a great spirit. Club France, they've been described to me. We shall see whether this rather scratch England side can break down this club togetherness. Here's David Hirst wearing number 11.
Yes, it's to be hoped that they've kept those same philosophies through the 80s, because certainly in 82 and to a certain extent in 86 they were as good a side as there was in the world to watch.
Nigel Clough, you saw there, who's being watched tonight by his father Brian and his mother Barbara, who have made their way down from Nottingham. Just too long for Deschamps, the number 7. Stuart Pearce captaining England for the 2nd time. He had the honour in New Zealand and scored a goal to mark a memorable day. And in this formation, he might have a chance to do that again, with England having 3 central defenders, and the marking of which is still probably in the formative stages in this match. Graham Taylor making a point yesterday that who will be marked by whom depends very much on the way the French set out their stall. Ron, some thoughts on that?
Yes, but it looks very much as if Des Walker's going to mark Papin from the word go, and Martin Keown will take Cantona. The two French strikers have just actually switched positions, and it was noticeable that the English central defenders, or the English markers, went with them. That'll leave Wright as the spare man at the back, which he did fairly well in the World Cup.
Chris Woods who I'm sure has done his best to rid his mind of his unpleasant experience at Highbury on Saturday. 7 goals conceded then. 18 Sheffield Wednesday have let in the last 6 matches. Here's Cantona, stopped by Keown, swept wide for Shearer by Hurst. Thomas pumping into the centre, and England have a corner. 3 minutes gone. Shearer takes his place in the centre, and Clough has come across to take charge at the set piece. Wright has come forward. Thomas always a danger in these situations. And Papin helping back, and Rob Jones going in to knock the ball forward. What a fairy tale it's been for him this season. But he has played so well for Liverpool in, I think, 21 games since he moved from Crewe. A meteoric rise, if ever there was one. Casoni, one of half a dozen Marseille players in the side. Amoros, who's breaking the French record for appearances tonight. And down goes Perez. And it is going to be a free kick rather than a corner. Amoros to take it, his 77th international, beating the mark set by Max Bossis. And Cantona, France appealing for a hand used by England as they blocked really the first chance of the game, when the free kick was problematic, to say the least.
Yes, I don't think Graham Taylor will be very impressed with the marking on that. There was about 3 Frenchmen got themselves spare from the kick, and in actual fact, Cantona's shot looked goal-bound.
Here's Wright. Rob Jones earning his place with a little bit of good fortune tonight, because Graham Taylor has made it clear that David Rocastle would have played on the right-hand side had he been fit. Here's Webb, delighted to have another chance for England. Bolly's header goes behind for another England corner. Basil Bolly directing his markers. He hopes rather better than England did in dealing with that free kick a moment or two ago. It's Clough again. And it was Fernandez who got his head to it. And Papin, who France will want to employ in the other half of the pitch, right back on his own goal line. Michel Platini, who was reluctant to take this job in the first place, really with the help of his assistant Gérard Houllier, has built a redoubtable international team. How will England fare against them? France have the continuity and the proven class over the last 3 years. But for England, it's a side with 1 or 2 regulars like Des Walker, and the chance for Graham Taylor to look to the future. And also, one suspects, keep 1 or 2 cards close to his chest tonight, given that the 2 countries meet in Malmo on June the 14th. The 2 number 4s, Keown and Bully. When Martin Keown played here last season for Everton, he was off the field for a while with a broken nose against Crystal Palace in the ZDS final. Here's Wright. England glad to see him back again after his injuries this season. Clough in this floating role, which is how he's used by Nottingham Forest. Casoni. It was Keown who intercepted. Now Papa. Ross, who was just caught by Clough. Manuel Amoros, who played in the 82 and 86 World Cup finals, was in the French team that so gloriously won the European Championship in 1984, which was very much Platini's tournament as a player. 9 goals in 5 games. Amoros. Now the sweeper, Blanc. Anglomar dispossessed by Pearce. Shearer. Rob Jones having a look around him and playing it sensibly to the feet of Webb. Well, Pearce's header has dropped in play. Thomas had to bend his run to get it. Headed on by Hurst, and it's Jones who has a chance here.
You know, Martin, as he's shaped up there, you would think the sort of season he's had, he's going to make his international debut and started off with a goal. I would have bet money on him scoring there. Difficult chance for him, not too dissimilar from the position Dixon hit a goal in against the Irish. But it all started when surprisingly enough, when the French defence tried to push up originally, tried to catch England offside. And there seemed to be a misunderstanding, which is strange considering that prior to that, they've looked a team that has obviously played together quite an amount.
Clough, not picked up. England will hope it stays that way. Thomas, who'd got into that onside position down the England left a moment or two ago. And Thomas again, who will attack anything in the penalty area when he can. Had a spell earlier this season when he scored in 5 consecutive matches for Crystal Palace. Here's Blanc. Fernandez. Now Perez. And Walker alongside Papin. I think we'll see plenty of that. But Papin has scored at such a phenomenal rate at every level that he's played at. Walker will realise that, well, it could only just be one momentary lapse, which could ruin a good evening's work. Here's Didier Deschamps. France unbeaten since they lost to Scotland in March 1989. Prior to that, they'd played a friendly at Highbury to get some more experience against the British style, and were beaten 2-0 by Arsenal. A number of these players played in that game, including Papin. There's Casoni winning the header against Shearer. Showing his strength and withstanding a foul tackle that was penalised by the German referee.
Yes, I think that's a tactic England could well use, is David Hurst lying up the inside right channel, if you like, and feeding it into his feet. And he's very, very, very good at rolling back into play off his left foot, which opens the whole game up for him.
Well, Webb to take the free kick. Keown, one of 5 England players moving menacingly forward. Mark Wright is another. Pearce had to stay back. Here's Jones. Hurst in the middle, and Jones takes them on. Can he reach it now? Well, he's already earning Crewe extra money with his appearances for Liverpool.
Well, this is brave and positive, and, you know, remarkable confidence considering the early stage of his career. Just thinking earlier, you know, he's probably had more experience of playing in a sweeper system than any of the other England players. I mean, it's something Dario Grady often experimented with at Crewe.
I asked him that yesterday, Ron, and he said he had half a season, you're quite right, playing with the 3 central defenders inside him. But that was in the 4th division. Webb, whose injury problems, of course, came in an England shirt in Sweden in 1989. Torn Achilles tendon. David Hurst always looked a player who had the strength to be a forward of pedigree, but he's seemed to have improved his pace over the last couple of years.
Yes, I think as he's got stronger, I think it's just been a gradual process. I mean, he's obviously always had the basic pace, but as he's got stronger, he's been able to apply it more.
Here he is now, and it's hooked away from him by Boly. Angloma, the number 3, playing on the right-hand side for France. Boly, one of their 3 central defenders. Fernandez, very much in the engine room. And offside, although a close one. Angloma, who has the licence, as Rob Jones does for England, to push forward from midfield. And we've seen a little bit of that from both players so far. Perez of Paris Saint-Germain. Here's Deschamps. Amoros got infield. Perez pulled wide. Now Fernandez. Plenty of movement from France. They're all in front of the England defenders at the moment. Clough trying to get a tackle in. Wright comes out forcefully. Webb has only one ball on forward, and he had to make space. And in the end couldn't play it. France have a player down hurt. And Angloma has knocked the ball, he hoped, out of play. And it's Fernandez who's hurt. Michel Platini, Gérard Houllier, his right-hand man, and very much an Anglophile. Had a spell as a teacher in Liverpool. Well, Fernandez is having a bad time at the moment. He was sent off playing for his club Cannes at the weekend, and here he is down injured. And not a time to want to be out of the picture with France. As you saw, their record under Platini is really superb, and yet he started with 4 games without a win. It's gone almost perfectly since then, and Fernandez is okay.
Yes, it's a bit of an ordeal for England in midfield at the moment when we lose possession, because the French are very, very good. They're very fluent. They interchange positions very well. They keep the ball, and it's important that we keep our concentration and don't let runners run in behind us. That's one of the big problems when you play against a team like this. They're prepared to pass the ball about in midfield and then put a sudden break be through our defence. And with the exception of this fella on the ball, we haven't really got anybody in midfield who you would term a natural defender.
Angloma. Here's Deschamps. They're quite happy to play the passes short and work for their openings of France. Cantona. Now Shearer, faced by Casoni. Alan Shearer with this marvellous record at under-21 level, which includes, incidentally, scoring a winning goal against his equivalents from France at that stage. That was last summer. So it's another England corner, another chance for Nigel Clough to play the ball in. Keown's waiting by the near post. Wright joining Thomas and Hurst, with Shearer in there trying to keep an eye on the goalkeeper, Rousset, and backing towards him now. And Rousset, who's only played once before, and that was against Kuwait 2 years ago. As Chris Waddle was saying at the start of the programme, known in France as a somewhat nervous starter, but, well, he coped with that corner under some pressure.
Yeah, it's a pity England really haven't had an opportunity to put him under more pressure, isn't it? We've had a couple of corners that we've loaded in and almost got on the end of, but really we haven't been able to sustain any pressure. That's due to the fact that the French have had the ball for most of the game.
Well, experimentation from Graham Taylor to increase the education of his younger players. Here's Boly. The two countries, incidentally, had agreed to fulfil this fixture even before the draw was made for the European Championship, recognising that they could be put in the same group, which is what happened. It was an awkward challenge by Pearce, not much more than that, but a free kick is given. Didier Deschamps was the player involved for France. With 18 minutes gone. Fernandez and Perez over the ball. Blanc often involved in the set plays for France. Casoni is waiting for the ball perhaps to be rolled onto his left foot, but it goes to Papin, who is such a student of the way he scores his goals. It's a mixture of hard training, hard preparation and brilliant improvisation, but it all went wrong for him then.
Yes, that would have been more suited to Twickenham, I would have thought, than Wembley.
I don't think we should mention rugby union with France. They've been rather bashful about talking about the subject after the bad behaviour of their fellow countrymen in the international at the weekend. But yes, would have been worth a few points and another code.
This is the fella I think is causing England the most problems, you know, Perez. He's getting in a little position where nobody's actually picking him up, and he's floating just behind our midfield, and he's supplying most of the ammunition at the moment, Martin.
Well, it was Amoros outside him on that occasion who in the end fouled Jones. And it is the left-hand side that's causing some concern, and Perez not really being marked at the moment in England's defensive system. Here's Blanc, and he's free. Christian Perez. The second cross after Keown had taken the steam out of the first didn't really harm England. Blanc. Now Boli. Angloma. With Pearce and Hurst trying to arrest his progress. And Papin gets up. And England were rather waiting and watching then as the cross dropped.
Yes, I think Des Walker could be accused of being guilty of ball watching there. We had actually 3 defenders in the box against Papin, and if he'd have made any sort of a decent contact, he may have given us a big problem there.
Down goes Shearer. The last time France came here in 1969, they were beaten 5-0. A fellow called Hurst scored 3 goals that night. Geoff Hurst, who's the guest of honour for this game. I wonder whether it'll be David Hurst we'll be talking about. He's hoping for a lower cross than Shearer supplied then. But Shearer has certainly earned his opportunity.
Yeah, very much so, and I think this is a marvellous opportunity for them to play against the sort of things they'll be playing against in Sweden. Man-to-man marking with a sweeper behind them. You know, neither of the young strikers, Hurst or Shearer, has had much of this experience at this level of playing against this type of marker.
Yes, David Hurst has scored 1 goal for England on the summer tour down under. Here's Wright. Well, Jones got the break against Deschamps and was a bit unlucky then. It was certainly a confident enough ball inside. Clough. Now Shearer. And that's Rousset's. Ron, I know a point you were making before we came on the air, that we saw Clough supply Pearce then, and you feel that that might suit Stuart Pearce particularly.
Yes, I've never felt Stuart Pearce gets as much value attacking-wise, particularly at Wembley, as he does when he's playing for Forest. And I often think part of that reason is at Forest he's inclined to get the ball, roll it into Clough, and then just carry on his run into the penalty box. Now, in the England team, he's never really had anybody like that, anybody that can play the little passes through, or with the same understanding. Likewise with Webb, actually. I mean, when Webb was at Forest, he was very reliant on Clough feeding him in, particularly when he was making those strong attacking surges through what you would call an inside right position.
Well, by the standards of those two chatterboxes, that was quite a quietly made point from the touchline. Shearer's gone offside. Incidentally, in case you haven't heard, Shearer's clubmate, Matt Le Tissier, is one of England's substitutes tonight, having had a taste of the B game in the second half last night. It really has gone well in the sporting confrontations between England and France over the past few days. Rugby Union, Rugby League, B international football. But be really savoured by lovers of this code. And it's not going to be easy. That is, I'm sure, how Graham Taylor expected it, and that's how it's shaping up so far. With 24 minutes gone.
I think what the newcomers will find, particularly against a side with the quality of these in possession, is how important, I was just going to say, how important it is not to give possession away. I mean, we haven't really been able to build up a head of steam, which I suppose is understandable. You know, in many ways we are the underdogs. But you know, every time they get the ball, they're prepared to put passes in and just wait for movement and wait for a little opening to appear.
Thomas. Watched by Deschamps. Free kick to France, quickly taken. Fernandez caught, I think, halfway between trying to find Anglomar and Papin, who was more central of the two.
Can't help thinking, I said it earlier, can't help thinking if maybe Webb or somebody doesn't pull across onto the number 10 Perez, he could be the one that's either going to play the killer pass or in fact make a through run himself.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Ron, because when Graham Taylor was given the team yesterday, the French team that is, Perez was the one player he was concerned about as to where he might play and how England might have to deploy their forces. At one point, I think it was possibly going to be a job for Martin Keown to operate in almost a right-back situation.
Yeah, but he's not quite in that position, is he, Perez? I think that would be a bad area for Keown to come out and have to mark. He's in a position sometimes Merson occupies for Arsenal, that just a little left side, little inside left position, neither as a midfield player or as a striker.
And basically, he's gone in between Rob Jones and Neil Webb, and he's getting away from both of them. Jones having to keep an eye on Amoros, who's pushed on ahead now of Perez.
Well, that's where they probably obviously have a better understanding of the system. They're used to playing it, but every time Jones goes to go in to pick up Perez, Amoros makes a run round the back of him and occupies him and takes him back.
Here's block. Now Deschamps. Cut out by Webb initially, falls for Anglomar, pierces in the way for England. Clough, Thomas under pressure. England having to do most of their work at the moment in that state. And it breaks down in their own half. Amoros has only scored once in the 76 internationals, but he's made space here to test Chris Woods, and in fact, direct quite a sophisticated, softish shot beyond the goalkeeper's dive and behind for a goal kick.
It looks, once he gets to this point, actually, it looks quite a fair chance. If he takes it one more yard, he probably gets himself into an excellent scoring position. If he'd have just knocked it out of his feet there and gone again, I think he could have virtually got through the line of the defence.
Walker's header back for France by Boly. Cantona, who played a half in the first division for Leeds at Oldham. Here he is again, the problem child of the French game. Deschamps, held up by Wright, but here's Amoros. Papin coming in, trying to get in front of Walker then. Oh, it's a stray one from Hurst. And it wasn't really punished by Anglomar, who had more time than he realised.
Yes, I think that's where the likes of David Hirst and Alan Shearer have got to be brave enough to say, all right, I've come to put my stamp on the game, and you know, I'm not going to be overawed by it all. I mean, Hirst is a far better player than to give possession away like that.
France have never beaten England in England, but you do sense they will have an opportunity here because of the continuity we've been talking about. This, barring injuries, their first choice side. Cantona. And Woods picks off Papin's attempt to find the Leeds United player. Here's Webb. Thomas trying to make things happen by getting ahead of the ball from midfield, and then he was chesting it down, he hoped, towards Shearer, but that wasn't the case. Deschamps. Papin dropping deep this time. Three in the centre, Papin waiting on the edge as Perez, really for the first time in the game, switched to the right-hand side.
It's a little bit of a shaky period now for England. We're just starting to get stretched a little bit. Their passing is pulling us all over the place. Fortunately, at the moment, they're not showing a great deal of penetration, the French.
Up goes Casoni, the number 6. Oh, and Woods not exactly taken by surprise, but Perez against the odds going for the tight angle.
That's the interesting thing, is we've got a crowd scene of England defenders there, and you can see one or two blue shirts just in unmarked positions in the middle of goal. That's a good effort from Perez. I shouldn't be surprised if somebody like David Batty isn't brought on to sort of detail to man him.
Deschamps. To Hirst, screening it from Blanc. Shearer trying to force a way through here. Across comes Amoros. Blanc is there. "15 minutes to go to half-time. England 0, France 0. And France having more of the ball. England trying to play the quick tempo style of play that Graham Taylor calls for from them when they do get possession, but it's not easy. That was a late challenge there by Boly on Webb. And that must make Manchester United wince, having lost Webb, of course, with that Achilles tendon injury in Sweden for so long. And Webb desperate to play for his country again. And if Boly had really connected with him then, well, that might have been the end of the match for him. As it is, it was certainly a nasty moment.
I think Webb was just a little bit fortunate. I think at the last minute he actually saw him coming just before he popped the ball off. Managed to take somewhat evasive action.
Neil Webb last started an international at Wembley for England back in the summer of 1989. He scored here against Poland. It was all looking good for him in the team going into the year that ended in the World Cup finals, but although he did make the squad, his place went with that shocking injury in Sweden.
He's actually looked quite good in possession, hasn't he? Which you would expect. He's a good passer of the ball. As I say, him and Clough are both good link-up players, can both combine. I mean, the biggest problem, as I say, we've got is when the opposition get the ball. We haven't got any natural competitors, with the exception of Thomas, that can help win the ball back.
David Hirst beaten by Casoni. Perez cropping up, able to collect the ball, relatively untroubled again. And he's actually being allowed by England to move around across the full width of the midfield. Here's Casoni. Taking too long, Webb blocked, but Fernandez threading it through for Perez again. Mark Wright, with a much longer stride, made up the ground. Christian Perez, who played in Michel Platini's first game and scored. It was Perez's debut. against Yugoslavia in a World Cup qualifier. France, of course, didn't make it to Italy for 1990. They didn't qualify for the 88 European Championship finals either. So this is a renaissance for them. And you can see why, from what has been on view so far, they have such a good recent record. England finding it hard to get a regular share of the ball. Perez. That's ruled as a dive by the referee, Webb. Clough, Thomas setting off again, trying to make an angle for Clough further forward. Here's Pearce. Easy for Blanc to deal with, and he's got a marvellous record of scoring goals from the sweeper position. Oh, and that was unlucky, because had that gone into the stride of Perez, England could well have been completely opened up. The potential was there, the combination between Laurent Blanc and Christian Perez.
Yes, it's understandable. I mean, England are experimenting. We're looking at the system. I feel if this was a competitive match, I think Graham Taylor by now would probably have pulled one of the central defenders off and put Batty as an extra man in midfield to just give us a little bit more bite and to win a little bit more ball possession. Because I'm not so sure at the moment we actually do need three central defenders at the back.
Here's Cantona after Nigel Clough had lost his way. Deschamps, Papin's in the middle. It's across the face of the goal safely for England. Frustrating for France. And particularly Nigel Clough will be relieved because he lost possession.
Yes, I mean, that's a good measured pass. That's their almost, I would guess, their best attempt of the match there. What did concern me there is Stuart Pearce just in picture there. I mean, I've got a theory about Pearce in a sweeper system. He's not entirely comfortable. He's arguably the best left full-back in the world, playing in a natural flat back four where he's coming onto the ball. Actually, when he's ahead of the ball, I think he does have his problems.
And Deschamps was easily in behind him then, as Pearce felt the central defenders were there to deal with it, but they weren't. Here's Papin, now Boly. Cantona through the middle. Anglomar making a run as well. Cantona on the ball. Fernandez. Boly. And Woods comes out to make his catch. They haven't quite produced the final thrust, France, but there's danger there of plenty to England. There's a great regret of Michel Platini that he didn't play here for France. He played for the rest of the world against the Football League 11, part of the league centenaries, you might remember, a few years ago, and he just retired. He was man of the match.
I would think that was almost their best build-up then. If Shearer, who's very good at those flick headers, could have just measured his header a little bit more, he would have put a beautiful ball into Hurst's path.
10 minutes to go to half-time. 2 goals from Mo Johnston sent France to that defeat in Glasgow. Deschamps. Cantona's dummy, and well, Papin didn't react immediately, but he was quick enough to get there. Amoros. Here's Anglomar. Cantona. Oh, Anglomar had just hesitated, not really expecting the pass to come quite as quickly as that. England having to fight for it in their own half through Shearer, who's got plenty of that sort of spirit. Papin getting better support, though.
For some of those young players, Jones, Hurst, Shearer, people like this, you know, this will do far more than a million coaching sessions. 45 minutes of playing against this stuff, because they're getting pulled all over the show at the moment. Their instructions that they received from the manager when they went out are starting to go out of their heads a little bit because they're tiring. And now it's very, very important they stick at it, because at the moment they're getting pulled all over the place, and it's going to test their character a little bit.
Clough. Put out by Casoni. What England do have is 2 young bucks up front. Gary Lineker obviously has his own views on the selection of Hurst and Shearer, but 2 players who are getting goals regularly in the First Division that have to be looked at.
You also get the impression, don't you? I mean, we've played for the last 4 or 5 years with Gary, and really he's been like a Lone Ranger in many ways. He had the link-up play with Peter Beardsley, but it looks to replace him. You can't see anyone on the horizon that's going to do it on his own. You have to think him maybe going back to a pair as a striker, and these pair look as likely as anybody.
Well, the crowd now not too sympathetic to England's current problems, trying to urge Graham Taylor's team to be a bit more direct, but it's difficult to play in any way at all if you can't get possession. But they have it here with Pearce. Fernandez in the way. Webb wearing that number 7 shirt that was for so long the property of his clubmate, Brian Robson. And Robson, of course, has a famous memory against France, scoring in 27 seconds, I think it was, in Bilbao in the World Cup group game in 1982. France have had certainly enough of the game here to feel that they might have got their first Wembley goal, but it hasn't materialised, and that in itself is very good news for this youthful England team. Hurst trying to do a bit too much. Here's Casoni. 4 up for France. Amoros making it 5. It's well struck, but it's the kind of shot that Chris Woods would feel comfortable about 10 times out of 10. Here's Shearer.
Yes, I mean that's Amoros obviously looking to celebrate his record caps with a goal. That's his second attempt. I mean, I said earlier, as I said it about Stuart Pearce, I think is the best left back in the world. But I tell you what, this fella on the ball again, Amoros, he's been as good a left full back as has been for years.
It was a nice touch when France played their last match. Bossis came onto the pitch before the game and presented Amoros with a gold watch as a souvenir. Here's Papin going in, and Wright went with him just enough. And the European Footballer of the Year was, just for a second it seemed, leading the race to be first to this one.
Yes, I must admit, when the ball was whipped in and I saw him getting in front of Wright, I thought that was curtains for England. He looked to have timed his run perfectly. I don't think Papin connected as well as he would have liked to with that. I mean, Wright has obviously got a second deflection on it.
It's Perez with the corner. Came off Walker, Hurst helping out. And he was pushed as he jumped.
I think he'll be unhappy with that, Papin. I think he'll feel he probably should have scored with that.
Webb. Nicely brought down by Shearer, who certainly knows how to fend for himself up front. Fernandez. Now Deschamps. Here's Casoni. Cantona, who's at Leeds really because of the problem for Lee Chapman, but they're not similar styles of players. But Howard Wilkinson in need of an extra forward. And this will help get Eric Cantona fit for his challenges that lie ahead in the Barclays First Division. France quite happy to keep the ball whatever part of the pitch that they're in. They're not going to be harassed and hurried, and England, who have had to do a lot of running just to stay in touch here, letting the ball be worked back to Rousset, who's been really untroubled in the first half. It's a half that has 3 minutes left to go. The start of England's preparation. Next match away next month in Prague to Czechoslovakia. Walker. Well, Casoni got very close to Shearer. and too close. So England have a free kick. What a boost it would be if, having been on the receiving end, mostly in the middle of the field, let it be said, but for much of the first half, if they could pull a goal out of the hat here. And there's no one better at doing that sort of thing than Pearce. But it didn't quite come off for Graham Taylor's captain.
That's a great chance. I mean, it's a very good ball, and he's actually spotted his ex-colleague there who stole inside the French fullback. And I think he'll be disappointed. I mean, as he was going, I thought he was going to launch himself full length and going for a header here. You know, we've seen him do that recently. He's got first to the ball, first run. He should have scored that.
He's been hitting the net recently for Forest. 9 goals in all for his club this season.
Which, as you say, would have been a tremendous boost for England.
Here's Jones against Deschamps, running Deschamps, and earning England a corner. Another indication that he doesn't feel out of place.
Great temperament, I've got to say that. I mean, I thought the lad was very lucky to get selected in the first place, but he's shown tremendous temperament, hasn't he?
Well, maybe England feel that there is a job there for someone to come and grab. Lee Dixon's been the man in possession, but by his own admission hasn't been playing too well recently for Arsenal. Clough with the corner. Rousset started to come. Wright got to it. And Shearer! Alan Shearer has brought to the full international his goal touch from the under-21s. And a great boost for England right on half-time. Spinning and scoring with some style.
Just for a minute, Martin, after Mark Wright heads this down, from the back we just see the number 10 shirt appear, and for a minute you would swear blind that was Gary Lineker, wouldn't you? That's a magnificent start for him.
Well, he hasn't played a complete half at this level, but he's already got his first goal. He's a strong-minded character from the northeast, a tough Geordie, and Gary Lineker's admiration isn't made too public, but I'm sure, knowing Gary, he'll be very pleased that a youngster's come in to give England thought and potential for the future. You can see how close to half-time it was, and the French trudge off, feeling perhaps a bit hard done by, but they were caught out. The goalkeeper started to come. When Wright knocked the header down, there was no one close to Shearer. And wallop, 1-0 England. So the mood, Ron, has really changed right on half-time.
Great, because it sets the game up, doesn't it? I mean, if they'd have scored and maybe gone on and kept the ball and denied us possession, then England may have become frustrated. Now what it does mean is France, to make a game, have got to put a cutting edge to all their possession.
They're cheering at Wembley. England lead France by 1-0. Alan Shearer, the scorer. We'll be back after the break. Gary Lineker is on for David Hirst, which gives Graham Taylor the chance to see in tandem. Alan Shearer, very much the man in focus at the moment. And Lineker, and that certainly will be with a view to the European Championship squad. But it's going to be difficult to observe Lineker in 12 and Shearer in 10. Take a bit of getting used to.
Yes, I think on that, Martin, I don't think David Hirst has anything to worry about. His turn will come again. I can see the logic in that. Obviously, he wants to have a look at them in tandem. And also, I mean, against this type of marking, which Lineker's a master of playing against, he probably wants to let Shearer pick up a few lessons playing alongside him and how to lose markers.
So it's 1-0 to England. Territorially, France supreme, but they're a goal behind. They now have a yellow card for Basile Boli for making an early mark on Lineker.
Yes, I think possibly there's a case of Gary Lineker's reputation going before him. Probably Bowley wouldn't have bothered too much if it had been one of the so-called novice England strikers.
And he went across there and offered a hand of apology, which was accepted. Pearce with the free kick. It's gone just over Mark Wright. Here's Perez. And Jones No worry about reputations. Settling in as quickly here as he has done at Anfield. Here's Keown. Well, it's a popular switch by Graham Taylor, as you heard the public address announce Lineker's arrival, as if he hadn't been spotted by most of the supporters here. He's spotted here by the linesman.
Yes, that is an area where the French aren't too good at. They play this offside trap. You know, they play with a deep sweep, and then every so often they'll push up and play offside, and they don't look overcompetent at it. I mean, Gary Lineker almost caught them there. He was as near square with them. You know, I think it was a bit unfortunate to be given at the time.
Keown staying with Cantona, right, coming out to meet the ball in the air. Walker leaving Papin for the moment. And Pearce well ahead of Anglomar. He certainly tried to roar down the right-hand side for Platini's team. Boly. France, like all visitors to Wembley, making appropriate noises about the beauty of the setting and the thrill of playing here. And remember, they've been here as a nation 3 times before and lost on all 3 occasions without scoring a goal. 4-0 back in 1957 when Bobby Robson, on his England debut as a player, scored twice. 2-0 in the World Cup of '66, 2 then for Roger Hunt. 5-0 in '69, 3, 2 of them penalties from Geoff Hurst. Anglomar, here's Perez. Jones at his back. And a free kick given away rather unnecessarily there. That was youthful enthusiasm perhaps, but it betrayed a bit of inexperience. The throw wouldn't have worried England half as much as this free kick, but in the end Jones has no great concern about conceding it because it was caught easily enough by Chris Woods.
Yeah, it's unusual how many set plays, corners and free kicks the French have lofted into our penalty box. Before the game, you'd have bet money that they played little short ones and tried to pass the way in, but they haven't. They've played very much a route one way in.
Ball around the pitch well here. They will tell you over and over again that they're not a patch on the side of the mid-80s in this particular respect. Also, what they don't have is a player coming from midfield like Platini to get the goals that they need.
Yes, at the moment, that's, if you're looking at them critically, you say you can't quite see how they can score a lot of goals. Obviously, Papin is their main strike leader. But apart from the one header, I think Des Walker has looked after him quite well.
Lineker looking a little rueful. But he's swayed Fred Street away. It's interesting, Ron, that the French side of the mid-80s, the forwards were just foils for the midfield players, really. Did a lot of their running. But now it's very much the other way around, with the strikers, particularly Papin, expected to provide the goals.
Yes, remember seeing him in Mexico, where he didn't have a good tournament, did he? He just more or less come into the squad there, and actually, if he'd have been a little bit more incisive, I think the French could have gone all the way. He almost have won it, but the team you're talking about, the Tiganas and the Giresse and the Platini, well, that was fabulous to watch. The big fella at the back, what was it? The big black boy at the back.
Trésor.
Trésor, yeah, tremendous.
England's throw. Well, England trying to build a team of their own. and certainly put some pressure on those who would be regarded as being ahead of the majority of this particular side. His shots on target statistic giving England a 100% record. 1 shot on target, 1 goal. Here's Clough, still really trying to make a major imprint on the game, but that's not been only a problem for him. It's Mark Wright's pass.
Well, that was a brilliant exploitation of playing the sweeper system. A long diagonal ball from Mark Wright, which just cleared the left side of Amorous, and there was young Jones.
Webb has got it back almost to Thomas. It was a difficult ball to cross, very nearly passing out of play, with Rob Jones involved in the build-up again.
Yeah, there was Jones going on ahead of the ball. I was just about to say, from Wright's pass, and taking it very, very comfortably. It should be remembered, to be fair, because of the kids' early baptism. Basically, the goal has come because he was very, very positive and forced a corner when they didn't look anything on.
Here's Blanc trying to be positive for France. Papin, policed by Walker, and Blanc's pass easily cut off by Thomas. Clough, and Lineker had gone too soon and had slipped in any case. Papin.
He loves the Anglo, doesn't he? Loves, just as the play's developing in central midfield there, is just trying to dive his run inside of Pearce and have the ball played up alongside.
Eight minutes gone in the second half. Alan Shearer's goal giving England the advantage here in a match which will have some psychological bearing on when the two countries meet again in Sweden, but maybe not too much. 4 up for France. Deschamps, Papin to the right. Here's Papin, and he was trying to whip it in towards Cantona. That was a little more thrustful from the French. The purity of their passing hasn't been matched with too much penetration, but they need it now. They're a goal adrift. Here's Fernandez with that stooping style of his. Cantona, Perez, dealt with by Martin Keown. 'Lineker, and it's Thomas, brilliantly played by England. Rousset started to come, and Thomas tried to chip him and failed rather woefully.
I think we also saw there, Martin, the frailties of the French offside trap. Very well spotted there by Lineker, not a role you're normally associating for. And that's actually the first time I can remember an English midfield player being ahead of the ball.
Well, with 10 minutes played in the second half, England, who have come through a sticky start in this game, could have really taken it with a very firm grip as Papin tests out Woods under challenge from Walker.
Yes, I think you'd have liked to have seen Jeff Thomas take it out of his feet, wouldn't you, and go and attack the keeper. OK, you can all miss when you're one-on-one, but at least I think he'd have given himself a better than even money chance of scoring.
It's odd, Jeff Thomas, who is such a confident scorer of goals for Crystal Palace, has looked nervous. That's not for the first time in an England shirt when confronted by a good chance to score. You might remember a miss from a matter of inches on the summer tour. Maybe when he's got one for his country, he'll approach those opportunities with a greater belief. It's not been a violent game, but it's been an intriguing one. Being judged really in two dimensions, of course, on the present, but its value for the future as well. Here's little Didier Deschamps. Now Boly. It's a good try. He scored for Marseille on Saturday, but They lost to Lens. Incidentally, Bolly's brother, Roger, scored one of the Lens goals.
This is feral effort, isn't it? Actually, it curled away as it went past the post and looked a little bit worse than it was, but that wasn't a bad effort at all.
Blanc's header. Time for Wright. More even game now, run territorially.
Yes, England have a certain, obviously they've grown from scoring just before half-time. Great psychological moments. And they're playing with just a little bit more power and a little bit more pace. And perhaps they're able to they're winning more ball possession, I feel, than they were first half.
Helped on well by Lineker. The flag is up for offside against Shearer. Well, Graham Taylor will be looking at the two up front with particular interest, I'm sure. Gary Lineker often prefers to operate on his own. And certainly at times find Shearer going into an area that he might like the look of himself. Blanc. Calmly done by Webb. Often in the run-in to major international tournaments, friendly games to become a little taut and at times lacking in passion. But you can't say that about this one because of the individual aspirations of the England players and the collective feeling of France. And England playing it well again and very nearly catching out this attempt to play offside. It worked for France then.
Yes, the ironic thing is both Lineker and Shearer have been caught offside when they're actually looking along the line of defenders. A little bit surprising that, because they don't have to make the run too early. They can see what's going on. It's when you're more in a central position with the defender right up against the back of you that it becomes a problem.
Deschamps. Blanc. England must keep an eye on him. He makes the extra man very effectively. But of course they might catch him out of position if they break quickly now. Jones trying to play a give and go with Lineker. Cantona. He's got plenty of trickery, plenty of belief in his own skills. Here's Perez. There might be a problem now for England. Angloma running into the real teeth of Stuart Pearce, whose reputation is well known in France.
Yes, that wasn't a good pass, though. He'll be annoyed at Perez's pass for Angloma there. Perez could have played him in with a much better ball. 50-50 with Stuart. Pearce isn't the ideal way of spending an evening out. You were saying earlier, Martin, about Cantona has not played a lot of football. Do you feel that Platini will stick with him for the 90 minutes, or will he bring on one of his subs?
Well, he has got a striker, Simba. More on him in a moment, who is certainly a candidate to replace him. Platini playing a part in getting Cantona into English football, of course, because he values him so highly at this so-called retirement in a fit of pique from the French game, from this remarkable character whose temperament sometimes outweighs his talents, which are considerable. That's a lovely touch from him there. Papin, can he get this down? And following up was Eric Cantona. He was in at the outset of the move and he nearly rounded it off, but Papin was probing away then.
Yes, that's a good ball in from Perez. Papin can't quite, he's pulled off Des Walker's shoulder, can't quite get good control, but full marks of Cantona there.
Lineker, he's in, and he's put it wide by a matter of inches. And with the records getting closer and closer, the misses assume greater importance personally.
Yeah, well, you don't believe that. Gary Lineker certainly doesn't believe that, and I don't, because I would have put any money you like once it was in that position that has gone through a hole. Turning around saying, well, there's 3 left to get, isn't there now?
Well, he won't come any closer without collecting number 47. And the meaning of the miss, you can tell on the lips of the crowd who are still discussing it. Obviously willing Gary Lineker to become the first Englishman to score 50 times in full internationals, and thereby breaking Bobby Charlton's record. Fernandez with a header for Papin. And it was awkward for Walker. Got the ball rather stuck under his feet in the first place. England had enough bodies around in the end. And they're looking more and more threatening on the break now. Lineker, Jones a little wearily coming up outside him.
Just thinking what must be encouraging for Graham Taylor is we've got these in the second game in Sweden. I don't think their defence is exactly cast iron. Every time that we've mounted any sort of concerted attacking play, you always get the impression that we could break them down.
Papin was broken down in a different sense. And bearing in mind the competition at the top of the French First Division, I'm sure Chris Waddle will be wondering about the extent of the injury here. He'll need a fully fit Papin with Marseille tilting for the title again.
Yes, that could have been a little bit nasty because his legs loose there as he swung at it, and Des Walker's gone in with sort of equal sort of velocity. Shouldn't think it's much though.
Always seems to hurt more when you're a goal down.
Certainly doesn't hurt a lot when you're up here. It's strange. I think Walker's done a very, very good man-to-man job on Papin, and yet every so often, I think there's been 3 or 4 occasions in the game where Papin has pulled away on his shoulder, taken up good possessions, and hasn't quite managed to make it pay. I mean, that's the mark of a good striker. You have to watch him for the whole of the 90 minutes, because he's always, as we say with Lineker for us, always capable of making something happen out of nothing.
Well, France have used the stoppage in play to have a little coaching session on the far side. Certainly some words of advice coming from the bench. Walker's okay for England. Casoni. Cantona's lay off a little behind Fernandez. He can try again here. And he does have a sweet feel for football. Deschamps, the ball shepherded back by Keown. Shearer competing with Blanc. Boly. Anglomar. There's Eric Cantona, who's been talking to 1 or 2 Leeds players who have been dusting down their schoolboy French, like reserve goalkeeper Mervyn Day, who's been acting as part-time interpreter. Keown, right behind him. Graham Taylor, I'm sure, very pleased to have Mark Wright's authority available again. One of the senior citizens in this side, but here's the most senior, the substitute. Lineker is being forced wide. That won't put him off. In the end, it was going across the goal, and Casoni chested it back to Rousset.
That's what I mean when I do think the defence is very vulnerable. I bet Nigel Clough couldn't believe it when he looked up and saw how much space Lineker had got to run in.
Here's Deschamps. How much can France fight in this situation? How much are they prepared to do so? Amoros giving you a pretty quick answer.
Best shot of the night, do you think?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would guess so on that. I mean, he's had 3, and that one's made Woodsy work. He'd have been disappointed if he had conceded there, but that one had a little bit of venom packed in it.
Perez to take the corner. England leading by a goal to nil. Cantona, and it could have come down towards Laurent Blanc, who was waiting by that near post and had played a part in the corner kick routine in the first place. Shearer. And Rob Jones arriving again. And it's bounced off both bodies and behind for a goal kick.
Full marks to him. He's gone very, very positively. Started when Shearer put pressure on the defenders, and they're not comfortable when people go at them. Definitely, you know, that's, as I say, that'll be an encouraging mark for the European Championships.
Deschamps and France keeping the ball, otherwise they would have had a free kick. Here's Perez. Cantona and Papin in the centre. Clough. No foul. Amoros was the player who came away with the ball and takes England on again. And now he doesn't get a free kick either, so the referee being consistent. He felt that there were a couple of unforced falls.
They were both fouls, weren't they? I mean, I think he's just cancelled one out there. And Cloughy was fouled in midfield, and certainly Amoros was on the edge of the box.
Here's Bolly. France trying to find an extra gear now. And Lineker playing his part in them fumbling as they look for the gear stick. Just over 20 minutes remaining. England scored a minute before half-time. If you missed it, a debut goal for Alan Shearer. Tucked away Lineker style when Mark Wright headed down a corner.
I think if Graham Taylor's looking at it now, well into the second half, I think if there's one thing Graham Taylor would probably have been onto at half-time is that we hound them a little bit more. That's been very noticeable. We've tended to hustle a little bit more in midfield, and indeed the central defenders have come out and tackled stronger.
France are preparing to make the first substitution. Durand is going to take over, and it looks like a double change. So off go 8 and 10. Perez departs. He's not been such an influence on the second half. And number 13, Jean-Philippe Durand, who was pulled out of the B game last night. And the number 15 is Amara Simba, a 30-year-old striker who was born in Senegal, brought up in Guinea, and plays in Paris, where he's not a regular in the Paris Saint-Germain lineup. Something of a conflict. Their Portuguese coach, but he scored 2 goals in 2 international appearances, and France do need a goal now.
Certainly that's a big plus for England in that they've won a battle. Perez has played 1 or 2 good balls in the second half, but hasn't been anywhere nearly as effective as he was in the first half, when for me he was the best player on the field first half.
Here's Durand. That's a little wrestling match in which Rob Jones was the loser in terms of being put on the deck, but he got the decision. Well, it is a match of great interest in Britain, of course, but all around Europe, the television pictures are being beamed, with the assessment now starting of who is likely to be the most potent force in Sweden in the summer. Two candidates for that on view here. And England, with arguably something of a second string, are leading much more the full French lineup by a goal to nil. Webb, that's a fine ball for Shearer. Lineker joined by Clough in the centre. It comes for Clough! And Lineker, oh, and Lineker! 2-0. And whether he starts or whether he's a substitute, the outcome is still the same. There's still plenty of life left in Lineker.
Well, that's an excellent ball in from Shearer. Beautifully struck from Clough. He will have thought he scored. There goes Lineker. 1, 2. Nothing's going to stop him scoring.
And nothing, it seems, is going to stop him breaking Bobby Charlton's record.
But look at this. This is sheer power from the lad Shearer. You know, he's got his tail up after his goal. He's attacked the defence, gone strong, and the little bits and pieces that happened after it, well, full credit.
So 17 minutes to go, and England now have some breathing space. Nigel Clough connected so sweetly. The only doubt really in his game has ever been about his speed of movement. His speed of thought has more than made up for that in his career. His technique was exquisite as the ball dropped from Shearer's spade work, but it still needed someone to pick up the pieces. And I would venture to suggest that there's no one better still in the world at doing what you've just seen than England's number 12. The number 9, though, can be pleased with his part in the goal. England lead 2-0. And it's Amoros again on the charge. Anglomar. Still Amoros. England will try and prevent the cross coming in, and in the shape of Stuart Pearce, they were well equipped to do that. Amoros really has given a committed performance here. It's a lead now. That's is it in? As Woods saved it on the line. It was Simba who rolled it against the post. It was England caught still in a celebratory mood, really. And it's still 2-0. But my word, this was very, very close indeed.
Yeah, Martin Keown, his first real mistake of the night. Ball's just edging in, hits the post, and then they all go.
Well, if there is anyone to rival Lineker for opportunism, it was the player coming in after Simba had rolled it against the post here. Jean-Pierre Papin couldn't make it. But let's credit Woods for saving it. It's certainly... well, France had a perfectly good goal not given in the B game last night at Queen's Park Rangers, when the ball was definitely a foot over the line.
Even Les Sealy said that was a goal, Matt.
But I don't think we have quite the controversy here. What we do have is another indication of the game going England's way, and Casoni showing how France have been caught up in the competition as well. And he's getting a yellow card for his gesture of dissent and retaliation here as he jumped into Webb and in fact caught him with a trailing foot. That wasn't apparent from our first view of it.
Well, my first reaction was, and certainly in second, he should have been sent off for that. I mean, that's totally out of order, that.
Well,
it'll be very interesting to see if anybody takes that one up at all, Martin, because you know, if that had been an English league game, I'm sure that the Football League or the FA would have looked into that very, very closely as bringing the game into disrepute. It's scandalous, that.
Well, hard on the heels of rugby stars doing their bit against France. The footballers are coming out on top as well, but not without a considerable fight here at Wembley. France have played some fine football, but they haven't found the firepower. Gary Lineker has. What a surprise.
Here it is. That's a good, strong thrusting run there from Shearer. Straightens himself up, puts the ball in, and Lineker's done well there. People probably don't recognise the value of that, but he's run the defender Bowley under the ball to start with and allowed Clough the space at the back.
Papa! Offside, offside. Even then it didn't go in.
Yeah, it was a good early decision. The linesman had his flag up well in advance then. I must confess that incident before, yeah, he's offside. As you say, it hasn't gone in anyway. It's similar to the one, was it Lineker when he first came on? I still can't believe that incident over there, Martin, with Kazani.
Well, all credit to Neil Webb, who didn't make a fuss, and sometimes the player who is damaged can be the key to the reaction of the referee.
What was amazing, it was completely out of character with the game as well, wasn't it? It's been a fairly peaceful game, if anything.
It certainly started in a placid sort of way with France knocking the ball around, and England seemed to be going up a pretty steep incline in their task, but they flattened it out, and they're now freewheeling, they feel, towards victory. But maybe France can provide a sting in the tail. Walker not taking any chances that Woods was going to cut that out, which he would have done. Simba's fitted in smoothly up front for France, and the man with 2 goals in 2 appearances very nearly made it 3 out of 3 when he hit the post. Here's Cantona and Bolly. The game has been stopped. Whether it was dangerous play by Cantona, who went with his feet up then, I suspect it might have been. Yes, I think that was what the referee blew for. England 2, France 0. Alan Shearer right on half-time in the half that Gary Lineker didn't play in, but Lineker, who made plenty of headlines this morning with his omission, or shall we say Graham Taylor made the headlines for him, will have the sort of publicity he's more accustomed to tomorrow morning. And he's fortunate to still be intact. Bowley, who has been booked, and he's built to bruise opponents, shall we say.
Yeah, he's made a genuine attempt for the ball there, actually. Stuart Pearce played Gary Lineker a little 50-50 that they both went for at the same time. Don't think you can attach any blame at all to Bowley there.
Here's Amoros. Simba. Now Durand. Deschamps. England quite happy for France to play the ball around here, with the clock on the home side.
Yes, but we've hounded them a lot more this half, haven't we?
Pearce has the check. He's run offside. Thomas had to hold the ball. Walker was challenged by Deschamps as he played it eventually.
Yes, I think that's the thing he does so well at Notts Forest. He plays it in and then they just play it back into his run. Unfortunately, Thomas couldn't quite get his head up and spot him in.
Just pondering on that last meeting between the two countries 8 years ago this month, which France won by 2 Platini goals to 0. Brian Steen, now back with Luton, of course, made his first and only England appearance in that game. And England were outclassed on the night. Steen departed the scene. Shearer started much better in circumstances more favourable, really, playing at home, and it's the luck of the draw, really, when you get picked. Shearer and Lineker. I wonder whether that will be the pairing up front when England get to Sweden. Here's Simba, though, for France, playing for his part in those European Championship finals. So too Durand. Clough helping out, leaving it to his club captain, his captain of country tonight as well. England certainly have space now in which to express themselves. And not quite enough space on that occasion.
Yes, I think the England manager will draw a lot of heart from this. I mean, the French are reported to be one of the danger sides out in the European Championships, and this is the basis of their side. Okay, the 2 or 3 injuries they've got.
Anglomar finding Durand. That's a good try. And, well, Mark Wright saw the flag go up, I'm sure, because he's yelling at the linesman.
I think in his own opinion he thought it was offside. I'm not quite sure that anybody had actually given the decision.
Cantona, who a moment or two ago was involved in a little rough and tumble off the ball with Martin Keown. And let me just remind you, France came here 19 games unbeaten. They'd won 9 in a row. They're trailing to England by 2-0. England have got better and better as the evening has worn on.
Yes, you suspect that England have tightened the screw this half and gone out to pressurise, and it's paid dividends. I mean, they haven't been able to set up those fluent passing movements, the French, particularly in midfield. In the first half, they dominated for, what, 44 minutes of the half.
Jones. Well, Simba has got into that space to confront one of England's 3 centre-backs, Mark Wright. Cantona, Anglomar again. He really has been an auxiliary attacker. Here's Durand. Simba had given it up. In fact, he then turned and chased a hopelessly mishit shot. Well, David Hirst just behind Graham Taylor. Didn't have too many chances to shine in the first half. And really the tilt of the match as Lee Dixon perhaps gets ready to relieve a definitely tiring Rob Jones, and that's very understandable, the mental fatigue and the build-up to a game he couldn't have dreamt of playing in at the start of the season. We're into the last 5 minutes. Anglomar stopped by Clough. Boehly has to play it back to Blanc. Webb will have to come out and confront him here. And Webb beaten to it by Durand. 1 or 2 of the England players feeling the pace now. Whether that will let France in the closing stages, we must wait and see. Away by Keown. Certainly you can understand why Graham Taylor's got a substitute defender warming up in Lee Dixon. Good tackle by Deschamps. Here's Simba. Went on the outside. Wright was in the way. Easier for England to pick their passes now. But Lineker had to run across the pitch to try and stay onside. And Thomas didn't quite appreciate that. Well, it's been a case here of England taking their chances. Lineker, and they might not be finished yet. Shearer's gone into the centre. Thomas is there. France making rather a mess of the clearance through Bolly. Here's Pearce. The crowd wants something spectacular from him. Oh, and was a hand used there by Casone. One of those gloved fists. Lineker saw it from behind and believed England might have had a case.
You've certainly seen penalties given for that, haven't you? I mean, the fact that he was out in the open, right on his own, made it easy for the referee to spot.
Or not. Here's Giroud. Well, we've been ringing in the new here for England, particularly in the shape of Alan Shearer, but we're not ringing out the old yet, because Gary Lineker, well, his whole career has been one fairy story, really, and there's more chapters to come. Here's Giroud. England caught out this time, wrong-footed, but not when it came to the tackle from Thomas, which was timed as it needed to be, deep into the penalty area. Shearer. Just a couple of minutes left. Well, France will have a different goalkeeper for Michel Platini in Sweden. They will have Vahirua, their Tahiti-born striker, who's missing tonight with injury. But the rest, I would say, would be much as you're watching tonight. Frank Soze missing from midfield as well. He's the other of the three major Argentines. But Rob Jones trying to finish a splendid night for him with another telling cross.
Well, that's brilliant, isn't it? Rob Jones attacking Amaris, who's been one of the world's great fullbacks over the years, and beating him quite comfortably.
Walker finding Keown. They're all forward now.
They're enjoying it now, though, Martin. They've grown as the game's gone on, and they really are enjoying the game.
And they really have worked for the right to have this enjoyment in the closing stages, and maybe a third goal yet. Are we being greedy? Cantona. Here's Simba, 3 up for France. Cantona making 4. Well, they'll be hoping at Ellen Road that he can drive his shots a bit nearer the target. Well, Graham Taylor is entitled to be a very satisfied manager indeed. Let's just have another look at how wide Cantona was. But he got his critics this morning in the national press, Ron, for messing about with the side. But the scoreline tells it all.
Yes, he'll be encouraged. New players and new young strikers come in, and looks as if he's got an international career for a long time to come. And the other thing that will encourage him, Martin, is the fact that one of our biggest competitors in Europe, in Sweden, France, looked as if they don't have the teeth for a big competition.
Well, England have become the first country to beat France in almost 3 years. The goals from Shearer and from Lineker justifying Graham Taylor's team selection. And 4 months away from the meeting in Malmo in the European Championship, what psychological advantage can be gained from such an occasion as this is undoubtedly England's. The target of selection for Sweden, a great motivation for a number of the England players in this experimental lineup. And the outcome, a victory over currently Europe's most successful side.